Advance and be recognized, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sitrep podcast, your forward operations space for all things military and historical wargaming. I am your host, Ariskini Jim, and today we're back to finish up our game at the Battle of Skybyn, part of the opening phases of the Ukraine war in 2022. The game is presented in 15mm and uses the 7 days to the River Rhine system by Great Escape Games. Now, part 1 for this video is already up. There's a link to part 1 in the description of this video. Check it out if you're interested to see how we got to this juncture. So we went over the background and context for the Battle of Skybyn in last week's video. Again, hit that link in the description if you're interested in the full details. For now, suffice it to say that when the Russians first went into Ukraine in February of 2022, one of their big operational maneuvers was a broad pincer maneuver aimed at the capital of Kyiv, headed down both banks of the Dnipro River. As we all saw, both sides of this pincer quickly came to grief against determined Ukrainian resistance. On the east side of the river, the Russians ran into problems at the town of Chernihiv, which they were able to besiege but never quite able to clear. Finally, on the 9th of March, elements of the 90th Guards Tank Division were able to bypass this obstacle and head down towards the town of Skybyn. Skybyn was particularly important because if the Russians were able to take that position, they would be able to threaten the northeastern approaches to Kyiv down the E95 highway. Therefore, the hard-pressed Ukrainian 72nd Mechanized Brigade, already heavily engaged against Russian Marines at the Battle of Moshun, was forced to detach further units down to Skybyn to set up a devastating series of ambushes using the Stugna and Enlaw's anti-tank missile. Now it's the next day, 10th of March 2022, and the Russian 90th Guards Tank Division, specifically the 6th Guards Tank Regiment, now reinforced with the 288th Guards Motor Rifle Regiment, is trying to brute force their way around the east shoulder of the town. This is the game that we currently have on the table, where we have Mark playing the Russians on assault, and myself playing the Ukrainians on defense. So far, our game has proven to be actually pretty even. Although I've taken out a couple of his T-72 B3 upgrades, along with a lot of lighter armor along the way, he has shot down one of my very expensive TB2 Bayraktar battlefield attack drones. Not only that, he's taken out one of my T-64 BV upgrades, shot up one of my rifle squads, and pinned down one of my Enlaw's anti-tank teams. So when it comes to breakpoints, as we see in the 7 days to the River Rhine system, again, so far it's actually pretty even. Perhaps even worse for me, my surviving TB2 battlefield attack drone has now used up all of its UMTAS fire and forget anti-tank missiles. So although they've made an impact, by and large, my drones are effectively out of the game at this point. I mean, I can still bring on my surviving drone to spot for reactions. We're giving them the Recce special ability in 7 days to the River Rhine, but yeah, they're not making any more attacks. On the other hand, the Russians are tasked with the burden of assault. There are 3 objective points marked on the map, and Mark is required to take at least 2 of those in order to win the game. So the good news is, at least he has to come to me. Conversely, I have to prevent him from taking 2 out of those 3 objective points, and hopefully in the meantime, win the game on breakpoints. So how about we head back over to the footage, and we see how our recreation of the 2022 Battle of Skybyn turns out. The Ukrainians currently hold the initiative, so I'm going to go ahead and spend a second blue activation token on this BMP-2. I made the roll for his second activation, move down the road, and then prorate the rest of his movement off the road. Now we did have to pass through some rough terrain there, we have to check for that. So a tracked vehicle goes through rough terrain on a 2+, let me quickly check for that, make sure that we're legal. Okay, I easily make that, so he's fine, otherwise he would have been stuck there in that roadside hedge. For my next activation, I'm going to go ahead and fire up this Javelin anti-tank team. He's going to move his 9 inches and pretty much bound from one building to the next. So you see my blue activation token there. That's going to trigger some reaction fire from that BMP that is hiding out there behind that little farmhouse. Mark has made the roll to activate, and then he has done some damage to this Javelin team. So you see those white poker checks there, we're using those to track morale hits. Meanwhile, I've only got 2 activations left, so I'm going to go ahead and spend one on a little used rule, at least with our players. The Battle Group Morale Test. This is basically, I'm going to try to rally some of the damage off of that Javelin team. Alright, so I have to roll a d6, and depending on the result, I get to remove a certain number of tokens from that targeted Javelin unit. Alright, I get to remove 1 token off that. That leaves me with 2 morale tokens and a previous activation. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and use, I think, my very last activation. There it goes. To try and fire that javelin team and see what I can hit. And with a 1, he fails to activate. We're now beginning turn 3, and since the Russians are on the attack, we are always having them start the initiative. And Mark's going to begin with more autocannon fire from that hidden BMP back there. Mark's doing a pretty good job with all kinds of BMP and BTR-82 machine gun and autocannon fire on my infantry. My in-laws team is too far away to react. We give them a 24-inch range in this game, and my javelins have quite frankly taken too much morale damage to realistically have a chance to react. Alright, so yeah, there's just a lot of autocannon fire coming at me, and even with a failed conversion check there's just way too much damage. My javelin team has now exceeded morale tokens over its morale rating. It's now considered an eliminated unit. So now I just have my in-laws team hidden in that building, and he's taking all kinds of machine gun and autocannon fire from those BTR-82s you see further down the big field there. Now, this time, the in-laws is close enough. I might be able to react and put an in-laws missile and blow up another one of those APCs. So I need a 3+ to react. So good, I actually do successfully react to put a missile into one of those vehicles before I take the autocannon fire. But with the 3, the missile's gonna miss. So yeah, now that in-laws team is under fire, you see where they already have a morale token assessed against them from all these BTR-82s further up that wheat field. Now he's just activating and reactivating them and scoring successive hits, and yeah, it's adding up quick. I gotta do something about him just tearing up my infantry here. It's insane how much damage he's doing. Not only is he scoring a lot of hits with his autocannons, it's costing him multiple activations, of course, and there are some additional units firing at me from off the left-hand side of the screen that you can't really see. But yeah, it's already almost maximum stacked on that in-laws team. I gotta do something to relieve the pressure here. So I'm going to bring up this BMP-3. I really should have done this before. He's going to move forward and try to react and put some fire into those BTR-82s. Okay, in order to react, I need to roll a 3 up on a D6, and with a 1, he fails to react. Alright, so I'm really trying to lift some of the pressure off of this infantry, perhaps belatedly. I've already lost a javelin team, and an in-laws team's in big trouble. I'm now going to try and hit that BMP-2 that you saw a second ago. I'm again going to try to react. This time I succeeded, and now I just have to go ahead and decide what weapon I'm going to hit with, because these BMP-3s don't appear in base 7 days to the River Rhine, so we have some house rules for them to include their 100mm low pressure gun and their autocannon. So because I'm going against an armored vehicle, I'm going to go with a 100mm gun. You saw with that 8, I did score a hit. I needed a 5 up, make that a 6 up because I took a previous activation to move. Now I just have to penetrate the BMP's armor. Okay, so I get to use the larger 8 value. So the gun's power is an 8, plus my 3 makes it an 11, which exactly ties the BMP's armor. So when you exactly tie the target's armor on a successful hit, what you do is you max out their morale tokens. Whatever their maximum morale capacity is, you just go ahead and give them that many morale tokens to match that. Notice for veteran players of 7 days, we are reducing some of the Russian morale ratings to reflect, again, the poor state of the Russian army at the outset of the Ukraine war. Now, here's the rub. This was a reaction that interrupted Mark's fire against my infantry, and I did not destroy the BMP. So he still gets to take his shot, but with all those extra morale tokens I just inflicted, that's going to drastically affect his chance to hit. His 5 up goes up to a 9 up, make that a 10 up because of intervening terrain, and he has no thermal sights to help him out with that. But that's okay. With his 2 autocannon rolls, he winds up rolling a 10 anyway. That's going to be a hit. Now he rolls to convert that hit into some additional damage. Luckily, I'm in a building, so it doesn't matter. He fails anyway with the 2. And long story short, take your first shot. That's more damage on my in-laws infantry. Okay, Mark has now activated his Mi-24 Hind helicopter gunship, ready to do all kinds of evil Russian helicopter gunship stuff. Never good news when he shows up. Luckily, we do have a man-pads team on hand. All I have to do is successfully react. Again, I need a 3 up in order to fire my missile off in time, and with a 5, I make the roll. Awesome. Now I have to go ahead and shoot him down. It's an 8+ with a helo, no real modifiers, and with a 1. Long story short, take your second shot. We're in the market for some new man-pads gunners. So that hind is now free and clear to make its attack, and he's going after my in-laws because he just really hates my infantry. Alright, so the way we run things is helicopters get 2 missile and 2 rocket attacks per game. Mark is using both of his rocket attacks now. We consider them gun AT-7 and above, and as you can see, they get 1d10 per attack at ranges over 12 inches. So Mark has now scored some hits. As you can see there, it doesn't matter if I'm in a building or not as far as cover goes. So yeah, he has now destroyed that inmost unit. One of my T-64s moves in, probably too late, to support my infantry in the center, and it was a pretty expensive series of activations as well. You see where my first activation roll succeeded, but I went to fire and missed with that 4. My second activation failed, my third activation succeeded, and I finally managed to land a hit with that 8. But with a firepower of 10, that BTR-82 that I hit in the flank no less, didn't stand a chance. I didn't even have to roll the dice. He starts off pre-penetrated. Yeah, he's toast. Alright, now I'm trying to ping some more heavily damaged tanks with that 100mm gun off my BMP-3. I do manage to activate. Very good. Now I have to roll to hit. And with a 6, yes, I barely managed to hit, because I started off with a 5+, but I did move this activation, so my chance to hit was actually a 6+. Now that T-72 is already maximum stacked on morale tokens, so all I really had to do was hit him. So why didn't I use my autocannon when I get 2 rolls with the autocannon? Well, here's why. Notice that autocannon's firepower is only 4 to penetrate. So even if I roll a 10, the best I could have rolled on my penetration would have been a 14, which would not have gotten through the T-72's armor. In order to force a morale token in 7 days, you have to score a hit with a weapon that could have conceivably penetrated the enemy's armor. So I roll a 6, plus my 8, which is a 14 that does not get through the armor, but since an 8 can conceivably beat the armor of 17 on the T-72, it counts as a morale token hit, so it will force the crew to abandon through excess of morale tokens. That vehicle is now considered destroyed. Okay, I took my one and only T-80 battle tank here and moved him forward across the E95 highway. Now that will draw some anti-tank missile fire from that BMD airborne assault vehicle you can barely see behind that barn there. You see with that 5 in the tray, Mark has successfully managed to activate, and as far as his line of sight goes, he had to take a very brief sort of a catty corner shot between those buildings and through those chain link fences while I was moving. Now number 1, he has a morale token on him. Number 2, I was moving. Number 3, intervening terrain with no thermal sights. So his normal chance of 5 up to hit now becomes an 8 to hit. So let's see how he does on his roll. And of course he rolls exactly an 8 because, long story short, take your third shot. Mark's dice are on fire and Oriskany Jim officially hates his life. Now the good news is that happened while I was still moving, so my frontal armor was still facing. More good news, I do carry reactive armor. You see that S there next to my 17? That is 17 special armor. So what that means against the shaped charge in projectiles like anti-tank guided weapons, he's going to have to roll a D10 twice and use the worst result. So he rolls twice, and he's going to have to use that 2. That 2 plus his firepower, which I think is a 9. Either way, it's not going to be enough to get through my 17. So although I did take the hit, and it will cost me a morale token, to be honest, that T-80 is good to go, and he gets to go ahead and complete his move, and then take his turn. Now, that will affect his chance to hit as he takes his shot, however. Alright, so again, with that morale token, I do have to add 1 to my chance to hit. And I'm trying to kill that hated BMP-2 there that has actually, really slaughtered a lot of my infantry there. So I started off with a 5 up to hit, make that a 6 up to hit because of my morale token, 7 up because I was moving. Ooh, 7 up on a D10, come on! And of course I missed. After all that process and resolution, of course I missed. Mark is now moving forward with one of his BMP-2s, and you see where he's got quite a number of activation and morale tokens on him. He had to make a pretty healthy roll just to activate that unit, but he's taking some autocannon fire into the flank of my rather unwisely parked BMP-3. Alright, but this time I was able to react, and I was able to take an autocannon shot. Autocannons always fire twice and use the best result, so that 10 does count as a hit, and I rolled a 4 for penetration. You add the gun's penetration value to that, so 4 and 4 make 8. That's not enough to kill the BMP outright, but it will put a morale token on him, affect his chance to hit, just enough for him to miss my BMP3. Nice. Rinse, repeat right here, where this little BMP3 was threatened by this T-72 coming out to play. So I was able to react with my BMP3. There's his second blue token there. I did manage to score a hit. Didn't get through the armor, of course, with that little 100mm low-pressure gun, but it did force another morale token to be placed on the T-72, affecting his chance just enough for him to miss me. Oh man, here comes another T-72 out into that weak field to also try and put a round into that helpless little BMP-3. Now, as far as reaction goes, again, with 2 reaction markers already on him, it's not really worth it. We're going to let Mark take his shot. But between the penalties for his morale token and for moving in the same activation, again, that little BMP-3, he just gets lucky and he misses. So, yeah, the rounds land nearby, enough to knock down those fences. Oh no, probably killed the sheep, but the BMP-3 itself is still standing tall. Okay, I gotta do something with some heavier armor here. That BMP is only gonna stay lucky for so long. I only have 2 activation tokens left, so I'm gonna spend 1 on this T-64 BV upgrade. He's gonna move up to that corner there, pivot, and try to knock out one of those advancing T-72s. So he did have a previous activation, so I did have to roll to activate. Succeeded with a 4, did manage to score a hit with a 7, and then scored a 7 with my penetration. So 7 plus 10 for my gun's firepower equals 17. That's enough to maximum stack that T-72, but not knock him out. So I'm going to try to reactivate, and I barely make it with a 3. I just gotta hit that T-72 one more time to force the crew to bail out. However, my target to hit now goes up to a 7 up because of my 2 previous activations, and with a roll of 5, I unfortunately missed the target. Beginning turn 4, and I really wish we had had the camera going just now, because unfortunately for Mark, he just suffered the worst series of activation rolls in the history of 7 days to the River Rhine. He failed 5 activation rolls before he was able to actually activate and move one of his units. That's because a lot of his units, again, started off the game with a morale token assessed against them, plus I've been piling on a lot more hits after that. But he was finally able to activate one of his BMP-2s there. He took another autocannon burst against my, again, I didn't have a chance to move him, so my BMP-3 is still parked sideways like that. That's still a flank hit, and this time he did not survive. Okay, it's time to get serious here on my left wing, and this T-64 is going to open fire now that it's my initiative. I'm pretty sure that if I can knock out both of those heavily damaged T-72s, you see there at the top of your screen, that will push the Russians over their breakpoint and win me the game. So he's starting off fresh on a new turn, no activation tokens or morale tokens assessed against them. Conversely, the Russians have all kinds of tokens assessed against them. Any chance for them to react against me and interrupt my fire is going to be very, very remote. Mark is choosing not to waste further activation tokens on that possibility, so I'm just going to go ahead and open fire. It's a 5 up to hit. Thermal sights, negate intervening terrain. I have no damage, no previous activations. It stays at a 5 up to hit. So let's see how I do here in the dice tray. And with a 4, of course I miss, because, again, I hate my life. I go ahead and roll to reactivate. I succeed with a 4. And now I'm going to go ahead and try to shoot again, except now my chance to hit goes up to a 6. And with a 6, I barely scored the hit, and that will destroy that maximum morale stacked T-72. Can that T-64 activate a 3rd time and win the game? I have to beat a 3 on a D6 in order to activate him yet again. So here comes the D6, and with the 1, it fails. Okay, that's what happens when I try to do too much with too little. No worries, I do have another T-64 over here that can try and help out. The problem is the angle isn't quite right, so he's going to have to move a little bit before he takes a shot, and that will unfortunately affect his chance to hit when he does take his shot. Now, that second T-64 did have a previous activation taken, so I did have to roll to reactivate him, but with that 5 there, I easily succeed. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and take my shot. Unfortunately, I did move, and this is my second activation, so that 5-up is going to go up to a 7-up target to hit. And with an 8, I have scored a hit on that other heavily damaged T-72 with my second T-64. Okay, now I just have to penetrate the armor because he isn't quite maximum stacked on his morale tokens. The penetration value is 10, so I roll a D10 and add 10 to that result. Oh, thank God, Lady Luck was finally helping me out there. So 9 plus 10 equals 19. That easily penetrates the front armor of that T-72. He is on fire, and that is going to end the game. And yeah, that is where we're going to leave it for today, folks. So we have now won the game as the Ukrainian player because we have pushed the Russians past their breakpoint. Their breakpoint was 50 total points. I actually think we exceeded it a little bit. They wound up with, I think, 54 total breakpoints inflicted against them. I should say, meanwhile, my own breakpoint value was the same, 50. But I think I took like 44 or 42 points. So this was a pretty narrowly fought and bitterly contested game here. Some of Mark's die rolls, especially in turn 3, were just phenomenal. His dice were really doing well for them until they weren't. On turn 4, his activation dice just completely deserted him. I don't know what he said to Lady Luck to piss her off, but just, all of a sudden she completely abandoned him. Half of Mark's turn 4 just flat out didn't happen. And at a very, very critical juncture of the game when it really was in the bounce. Again, we were both within 1 or 2, heavy-duty units, T-64s, T-72s, maybe my T-80, within losing the game. So, yeah, Mark's activation dice right there at the beginning of turn 4 really kind of crapped out on him at exactly the wrong time. At the same time, that's also what we see happening to the Russian army and the real battlefield in a lot of these situations, where they might do okay at first, but again, in game terms, they start taking those morale tokens assessed against them, and before you know it, the army just kind of falls apart from lack of coordination. But well-fought game, Mark, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And there we are, folks. Despite taking quite a bit of damage to not only my drones and my T-64s, but especially my anti-tank infantry teams, this game is going to go down as a narrow and hard-fought Ukrainian victory. Clearly, a priority for Mark was taking out my anti-tank infantry teams. I mean, I don't blame them. These are some very deadly weapon systems. My Javelin team never got off a single shot, and my in-laws team managed to take out a single BTR-82. Now, part of the reason he's able to do this is an open book game with no real hidden deployment or movement, but still, Mark was able to put them under long-range suppressive fire, pin them down, and keep them pinned down until they ran out of morale tokens and broke from the field. But, in real life, the Russians do have infrared technology, they do have surveillance drones, which aren't really represented in the game, and as we saw on the table, they have plenty of helicopter gunship support. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility that they would be able to spot these hidden units, take them under fire before they can really engage Russian armor. The Russians have also made, in real life, some very significant gains in electronic countermeasures, which has been brought to bear and really dampened the effect on a lot of these Ukrainian smart weapons. But as we've said on this channel before, these Ukrainian conflict war games tend to shake out at least a little bit better for the Russians in general than they do, say, compared to historical results. That's because the Russian units in real life are, of course, being handled very, very badly, especially in the opening phases of this conflict. Meanwhile, players who are playing, Russian armies are not required to play their units badly. Sure, they're often handicapped by special scenario conditions or handicapped command and control systems, things like that, but in general they tend to have better battlefield information than real-life Russian commanders, so yeah, they tend to do a little bit better. But that's where we're going to leave it for now, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Please remember to hit that notification bell. Also, please consider joining the Sitrep Podcast Discord. There is an auto-accept invitation link to our Discord in the description of this video. Join our community, see what everybody's up to, and best of all, show us what's happening on your hobby table. But for now, this is Risky Jim with the Sitrep Podcast. We are rounds complete for another episode. And as always, Tango Mike for watching.